following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. Hello, listeners around the world on radio, streaming, and podcast services. This is It's Not Therapy. I'm Liana Kirsner, and I am not a therapist, but I am your source for navigating the madness of mental health using my top 10 sayings for going good crazy. This week, we're talking to another creator with autism, autistic creator, whatever language you prefer. I got through the This is It's Not Therapy podcast tongue twister. I'm happy with everything else I say this show. But when Blake Crash Priddle was on the show, I got a lot of good responses about the very human approach to one person with autism. And so I asked my friend, Bobby Calloway, to join me from Ireland tonight. And Bobby is the host of the Better with Bob YouTube channel, where he deals with various pop culture things. He's also the author of the wonderful, I call them middle grade books. He's a little more hedgy about what it's for, but all ages, shall we say, over the age of 8 or 10, books The Shallow Ocean and Joanna and the 12 Crowns. And Joanna and the 12 Crowns has just come out. You can find these books on Amazon. Bobby, thanks for coming on and talking to me tonight.
Well, thank you. I have to say, even though Liana is not a therapist, she is fantastic, but you all know that already.
Yeah, well, that's a contentious opinion in some corners of the internet, but um, Joanna is a retelling of the fairy tale, The 12 Dancing Princesses, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what made you decide to take a fairy tale that not as many people know as, say, Hansel and Gretel or Sleeping Beauty or something like that? What made you decide to do a fairy tale with sort of a modern, um, about girls? I won't necessarily say only for girls twist.
Mhm. I mean, I don't know if I've told you this, but this whole thing was first thought of exactly 10 years ago, like back in 2015, because back then I was obsessed with a certain show called Once Upon a Time. And it basically just consumed my life. And so, but I'd always been like, I'd always loved fairy tales. I'd grown up with them, and like my family had this really nice book with all these beautiful illustrations on there. And I definitely remember reading The 12 Dancing Princesses in that. And, as I became older, I just discovered all these retellings of different fairy tale films, like The Company of Wolves for Red Riding Hood and, Snow White, A Tale of Terror. And I just gobbled them all up. And I think I may have just been reading Wikipedia one day and, kind of familiarizing myself with the 12 Dancing Princesses and noticing like how often, like, compared to everyone else, like that one's rarely adapted. And I remember going, oh, it's probably because it has 12 main characters. So how would you tell a story with 12 main characters? And I was like, well, how would I tell a story with 12 main characters? And I can't remember if I was in my room at the time, but at one point I was in my room and, I eventually became an actor after this was before I even got into acting. And I just got up and started like actually improvising a scene. And it's that scene near the start where Joanna, the main character, a dressmaker's assistant, she gets a dress delivered there and there's a note hidden in there saying, "Help me." And so I just kind of, was like, okay, why is she being asked for help? Or like, why is all, and for me, the retelling was almost about answering all these questions I gave myself. Like, why is all this happening? Okay, why is there 12 characters in this version? Like, why does it have to be this way? And it just kind of, the obsession with Once Upon a Time definitely helped kind of make me realize there sort of were no rules in a sense. And I wrote a little bit of it 10 years ago, but I think I just ran into writer's block at one point. And so, and then at one point last year, it was August 31st was the exact date that it was published this year.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when I finally sat down to start writing it because I had the prologue worked out and then I was just, kind of coming up with things as I go, but I had the majority of the plot mapped out and it was just kind of, filling in all these gaps, if that
Right.
makes any sense at all.
Right. So would you say Once Upon a Time was a special interest?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So you took a special interest and turned it into an entire story.
I like the way you put that. We'll go with that.
Awesome. And because I mean, so you started this before you wrote The Shallow Ocean.
Technically, but
Yeah.
The Shallow Ocean was already written and pu be prepared to be published before I properly sat down
Right.
and wrote the first draft of
Yeah.
Joanna. Yeah.
Now, The Shallow Ocean is about a merman, which you don't see
Mhm.
much. You see a lot of mermaids. You don't see the guys. I mean, we have
Yeah,
Aquaman, but
strange.
that's about it. Now, you told me that that was because, well, you tell the story. Where did that come from? Because that directly ties into autism, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, there was one day I pretty much just had an autistic meltdown, and I just was feeling really stupid about myself because I mean I was a little older at the time, so well, it was only a couple years ago. So, and I was like, oh damn, I'm an adult now. I shouldn't be, having this and all that sort of thing. And I remember going back home and I was just watching a video on James Dean, who I was a big fan of, another special interest. And the video just mentioned that he really loved a book called The Little Prince. And the video kind of quoted passages from it because after James Dean's death, Elizabeth Taylor, who was one of his close friends, she showed his copy and it had like all these, earmarked pages because he would constantly go back to them to reread them to comfort himself. And I was like, "Ooh, this book sounds interesting," because I think I'd read an extract of it in school, like, but I never read the full thing. So I even like tracked down a copy of it, and I physically went out to a bookshop and bought it. I wanted to do things the important way, not just ordering online. And even before I'd bought it, I want to write something like that. So it just kind of, again, it was something it just created itself in my head. And I guess it was a real reflection of where my soul was at the time.
Yeah, I mean, The Shallow Ocean definitely has a Little Prince vibe.
Hmm.
I didn't know that before I read it, and definitely. But you also based it on the movie Splash featuring Daryl Hannah, didn't you? Well, The Interest in Mermaids, anyway.
Um, Suppose so, yeah, because I did a video for my channel a couple of years ago where, because I'd seen another video where an autistic girl, she talked about how Madison from Splash was very sort of, she could feel the parallels between herself and Madison. Like, how Madison starts off completely non-verbal and, she takes things literally and she doesn't understand sarcasm. And I remember thinking I really loved The Little Mermaid and Ariel. Like, she's one of my favorite Disney
Hmm.
characters. And I was like, hang on, Ariel's kind of autistic. And then you said something that just like felt like a punch in the face in the good way. You said Ariel's totally autistic because her I Want song is an info dump.
It very much is showing off her collection of things.
Yeah. And then there was a third mermaid movie called Aquamarine, and that was a big influence as well. Like the even the cover image with the starfish in the hand, like that comes from a little scene in Aquamarine where it's just like, you don't think too much of it when you're a kid, but when you're older and you watch it, you just go, oh, right in the heart.
And Daryl Hannah is, of course,
She is, yeah.
autistic. Yeah. Apparently Anthony Hopkins is as well. But it's interesting because the idea that actors like yourself uh, can have autism is one of these things I think a lot of people don't see how that works. And to me, it makes complete sense because my mother put me into performing because I didn't talk much as a kid. I was very, very, they called it shy back then. We call it introverted now, even though you can be both. I think I was more introverted. But uh, how how do you square performing with having autism? How does it help? Where do you think there are more unique challenges?
Um, yeah, I mean, that is a fantastic question, and I'm telling you that because it's given me a chance to think of an answer.
Yeah,
But
it's tricky how because you can only know your own experience. You don't know what it's like to be a different
mhm.
person.
But I have actually met a lot of actually some of my best actors I've ever worked with have been autistic, and I either didn't find out until later, or I knew in advance. So, and I remember speaking to another girl, and she said essentially being someone else was very sort of healing in a sense. And I can't necessarily give you the science behind this, but I can just kind of tell you the feeling that I felt before I started taking acting classes versus how I felt afterwards. I knew I'd done the right thing,
Hmm.
you know, almost like, well, okay, we may as well compare My Little Pony now because I have a video on that coming out where the movie has a unicorn with a broken horn, and it's a very good disability metaphor because she's basically looking for someone who will restore the horn, and her magic is wild and uncontrollable and kind of sparks out of control. And then when she's finally accepted, the spark in the horn just dies down because she's finally at peace. And then
Hmm.
some. And I remember when I saw the movie that I was after my first full year as a professional actor, I was like, that's what it's like. It's almost like quieting the storm that's within you in a sense.
That makes a lot of sense. For
Mhm.
for me, it was the whole craft of the thing.
Oh
You
yeah, that as
know,
well.
yeah, yeah. I mean, you do film, which is
Mhm.
the one thing I have not done because it is so slow that I think you have to be able to kind of hyper focus to do that,
Mhm.
especially on the production and the directing end. I mean, film is such a big lift that if
Oh
if
yeah.
if you don't like make it a special interest, I'm not sure how people do it. It is just so hard. We're talking to Bobby Calloway, the host of the Better with Bob YouTube channel, the author of The Shallow Ocean and the new Joanna and the 12 Crowns. Check that, both of them out. They are wonderful books. We're talking about him being a creator, a performer, because as you heard, he's also an actor with autism. Bobby, okay, if we go to a break, why am I saying this? We got to do it anyway. I'm just being polite. He's
It's
like,
what you
Karen.
expect on a Canadian radio show.
That's right. I just realized, wow, I just asked an autistic person a rhetorical question. Go me. Okay, we'll be back with more with Bobby Calloway on creativity and autism when we come back on It's Not Therapy. Questions, comments, concerns, Liana at nottherapyshow.com is my email. Nottherapyshow.com is my website with the contact form. At Not Therapy on social media. We'll be back. Autism and creativity on It's Not Therapy. The following program is a peer to peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. We're back in It's Not Therapy. I'm still Liana Kersner. I'm still not a therapist. We are still talking autism and creativity, and I am still here with my friend, actor, YouTube channel, content creator. That's the word for YouTube, content creator. I've still got the dated terms. And author of the fabulous The Shallow Ocean and Joanna and the 12 Crowns, books appropriate for ages 8 and up. My friend Bobby Calloway is here to talk. Now, Bobby, I want to talk about the idea of needs and accommodation for autism, because I know people are pretty surprised when they find out that you have autism. I mean, people
Mhm.
listening to you now, you're social, you're charming, you're personable, all the stuff that autistic people are allegedly not. And this is where we get into the language issue. I talked with Blake Priddle, a past guest, who's a radio like news reader with autism. And uh, what are your thoughts on the language of, it used to be high functioning and low functioning, and like, well, that doesn't necessarily work, so they changed it to high needs and low needs. um to me, these like big baskets, these blanket categories all have the same problem with them, is that it doesn't get into the nuance of individual experiences living with autism. So what's your what are your needs? Not to paraphrase, not to pigeonhole you into a needy actor category, but what are your needs regarding autism?
Besides the room temperature water and all the green M&Ms taken out.
That's a joke. Is it? Room temperature water is a thing. I learned that from singers.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to keep track of the temperature of the water, but I know for me, definitely with regards to acting, like the travel is always like that is the thing I stress the most about because like I recently did a short film where it was basically 3 days of travel, like just one filming day, but I had to spend one day getting there.
Yeah.
We'd wrap too late for me to get home, and I had to spend the entire next day traveling. And that was something, I had to really sort of spend a whole week preparing for mentally because like travel is one thing that just, completely floors me. And I had to just be, very just open and honest with the director, who thankfully is a friend of mine. It's like, okay, if you need me here at this time in this location, okay, this is what's gonna happen, what needs to happen. But he'd already thought of that anyway because he knew me. So, and I've also found like there's a location issue as well, where it's like, to put it bluntly, people who live in the Greater Dublin area kind of don't necessarily know what it's like when you live further away, where it's like the town I live in, right? Okay, if, say, you want me in the city center for 11, 12,
Right.
1, 2, 3. I have to get a train that leaves at 5 to 9, gets into the city for like just after 10, and then wait around until the next point. And like that is it. So it's
Right.
basically, if someone needs me there by that time, I have to like really prepare for my entire day as well. And or even just, having to get myself to the location. I mean, I think it is getting better ever since I started, sessions with you, but I remember there were like a good few gigs where I just realized, I mean, the travel was kind of I I probably could have done it, but I didn't have the bandwidth or the spoons, whatever metaphor you want to use,
Hmm.
to do it. So I basically had to sometimes I did drop out, or other times, I said like I don't think I'll be able to do this. If you want to recast me or whatever. And some people were really accommodating, and others were like, yeah, sure, we'll just get someone else.
Right. Now, what was the issue with the travel? I mean, travel's the worst part of working in entertainment for me too. Like,
Hmm.
once I'm at the location,
Hmm.
everything else is way easier. It's one, that
Yeah.
fear of being late, because
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
that's super bad. But is it because you're traveling by public transit, is it
Mhm.
the the need to prepare, like the need to rehearse the various steps? Is it the overwhelm of being around that many other people? Is it both? What's going on there?
It's definitely the sort of the catastrophizing of what happens if, this doesn't work out or I don't get there in time or, kind of all the things that could happen on the way there. Because unfortunately, my brain could turn, catastrophizing into an Olympic sport, but I don't know if that's a specific autistic thing or just, environment.
It's
But
it's a it's a form of it. People with autism have an overactive default mode network. So yeah,
mhm,
the what if brain just goes, which you use, as you talked about in the first segment, as an author to write amazing books. But yeah, when it comes to trying to get somewhere, especially
mhm,
a place of any distance where there's multiple connections, yeah, I
mhm.
feel that it wreaks havoc.
And another thing is I'm not able to drive, and a lot of people aren't really sort of, appreciative of that, I think they think because I can do so many other things that they think, oh, they're like, oh, if you just set your mind to it and all this stuff, or, and see, the thing is like I tried extremely hard. I once set aside nearly 2 years trying to learn, I even like uprooted my life for think it was about 3 months to do a course that was, where I had to relocate and it was entirely about learning how to drive. And it was sort of just, even with all the lessons and all the practices, I just kind of realized this is not going to happen. And I could tell that my instructor was sort of just like, yeah, and was kind of just humoring me to like until like we did the thing. And so, and a lot of people kind of they don't really understand that and sort of maybe just they're how some people don't necessarily listen to understand, they're basically
Yeah,
listening to find an endpoint to try and just like dismantle everything you said and like, oh no, you can do this. And my latest line is invisible disabilities don't go away with emotional blackmail.
that's a great line. Invisible disabilities don't go away with emotional blackmail. What was it overwhelm? I know a lot of autistic people I know have issues with there's just too much going on when you're driving.
Yeah, and there's also just a cognition issue where I can't process that sort of stuff in time.
Oh, okay. It's a processing thing as well with the stimulus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because other people find it's a coordination thing, like having to look multiple places, the
Oh yeah, that
scanning
as well.
requirements.
So I think it's
Uh,
probably everything.
yeah, okay. And I mean, it's funny because in areas that have a lot of tech companies, the idea that some people just don't drive and they shouldn't is common. Transit is a major requirement for any major tech company to open another, satellite hub there. It's interesting because I mean, driving is such well, it used to be this idea of independence. It seems to
Yeah.
be less and less that. Fewer and fewer people are learning to drive in their teens as a matter of course. Now, when you say, that's a profound statement. I'm going to repeat it again. Individual disabilities don't go away with emotional blackmail. You can tell the guy's a writer. Can you talk more about that? Because, like you said, I think people think they're helping, but they're really just invalidating, the fact that it takes all kinds to make a world, and this is just not your thing.
hmm Um, uh, well, there's another kind of related issue, which this was some, thankfully it's not as bad now, but like it was just exhausting when I was a kid and when I was younger. It's I issues with food. Like,
Big
I,
one.
I,
Yeah.
I have to eat plain. Like, anything that has like, restaurants love to drown things in sauce and, have all these garnishes on it and the textures and everything. Like, I say it's like it's not like I'm allergic to it. I mean, if I force it down, it's not going to poison me, but it's like my body's instinct when it feels that is to just throw it up.
Yeah.
And so eating in restaurants was always like really, distressing for me because it was like, okay, try to find the one thing on the menu that I can probably order. And, I always felt like I was being awkward by asking for it plain.
Yeah.
And so many times, like I would order that and it wouldn't come plain. So I was kind of just like trying to just sort of eat around it in a sense. And, it was tough.
Yeah.
But,
Textures are a major neurodivergent thing. For me, it was orange juice pulp as a kid.
yeah.
Oh my God, instant gag. I
Mhm.
don't know why. If it's fresh squeezed, I can handle it. But to this day, like concentrated juice, orange juice pulp, nope, it's not going down.
Yeah, when I was a kid and I when it was a Sunday, we had the big Sunday dinner where I was not allowed to leave the table until I'd finished my vegetables. So the
Yeah.
only way I could do it was like to either like cut them into tiny pieces and put, and like, throw them in my mouth, put a drink in and wash them down so that way which my throat wouldn't be able to detect the texture or the taste.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because these are just things like, so what, you don't like food? It's
Mhm.
become this thing that people get very, very, very invested in trying to fix that
Oh
instead
yeah.
of just, yeah. People will make fun of vegans until the cows come home. But I mean, a big one is mushrooms. I find with a lot of autistic people, the texture of mushrooms. Fortunately, I didn't get that one. But certain things to this day, the texture of cooked eggplant, I can't deal. Now, fortunately, I can't eat eggplant anyway. But the couple times I've tried it just to not be a wuss, especially if you've got friends from Eastern Europe, just couldn't get past it. So, I mean, I think this is one of these things where it shows that autism kind of exists on a spectrum of human realities, but it's almost like I want to talk about this after the break, the labeling. If it was just, I don't like this or I have an allergy to this, okay, people understand that. But when it's an autistic texture thing, all of a sudden people try to fix you. So you good to talk about that when we come back?
Oh, definitely. I already have something saved up.
Fantastic. And it gives you time to prep. Bobby
Mhm.
Calloway, author of the fantastic Shallow Ocean and the recently released Joanna and the 12 Crowns, the content creator behind the Better with Bob YouTube channel. Amazing looks at pop culture and actor, director, Bobby does a bunch of things. He's also my friend and he has autism. So we're going to come back talking about those labels on this episode of It's Not Therapy, dealing with autism and creativity. Questions, comments, any feedback whatsoever. If it's like, what's Bobby's channel? Where do I get his books? Message me, email me at Liana at nottherapyshow.com. Nottherapyshow.com is my website, at nottherapy on socials. Labeling stuff, creativity and autism when we come back on It's Not Therapy. The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. We're back in It's Not Therapy. I'm still Liana Kersner. I'm still not a therapist. I am still talking to writer, actor, producer, director, a whole bunch of other things, content creator on YouTube, Bobby Calloway, author of The Shallow Ocean and the new Joanna and the 12 Crowns. Both are available on Amazon. Both are appropriate for, we'll say, ages 10 and up, just so nobody yells at me. But they are wonderful books. I have read them. I enjoyed them. The Shallow Ocean, if you hadn't heard before, has a real Little Prince vibe. Joanna and the 12 Crowns is a retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses fairy tale. Now, Bobby, you're ready to go. I know you have an answer for this one because we talked about autism and labels. The idea that if someone has an allergy, people don't try to go, oh, just have a little, right? But when you're autistic and you have a texture sensitivity with food or clothes, people sort of try to exposure therapy you out of it. So what are your comments on this?
Yeah, I think it was last year I read, I think might have actually been a rare thing known as an insightful Tumblr post where,
Oh my goodness.
um, yeah, I assume it was, yeah, it was a girl, and she was saying that she used to leave parties early, saying she couldn't handle too much because she was autistic, and people would try to get her to stay, and then she just said, "Oh, sorry, it's because I'm a Virgo," and they're like, "Yes, okay, go, yes, Queen, do all that." So if she would just say it was down to being a star sign, they were just, the reaction was completely different.
That's unbelievable that even that astrology was more
Hmm.
socially acceptable than autism.
Yeah, I don't know if she was s saying that was a specific incident or just saying as like a general thing, but I would honestly believe it.
Oh, I would too. I've seen it. It's so odd to me that we get hung up on this concept of normal a lot.
Hmm.
I think a lot of parents get freaked out when they read about autism when, they have a diagnosis in their child, uh, and they see all these things that could happen. And, you're living proof. Blake Priddle, who I had on the program before, is living proof that people can do very well for themselves, with an autism diagnosis. But this idea of having a normal kid, I think the trouble with socializing is the thing that freaks parents out. I'm not asking you to talk about your own parents' reactions, but if you want to, go ahead. But what do you say to that? What do you say to this idea that people want a normal kid at all costs instead of perhaps a happy kid?
Hmm. I'm not sure. Maybe it's just really rooted in, um, sorry, I keep thinking of the Rugrats, and someone talked about how that was so reflective of the time of the 90s, where it was sort of like, where people would say, I'm not raising children, I'm raising little adults. So, and the whole thing of, having something to show off to the neighbors. So in a sense, a normal, well-behaved child was, another step. I'm not saying this was how it was in my house. I'm just saying it was sort of like a societal thing where it's like, show off to the neighbors and, a child who's like quote unquote acting out or kind of more obviously autistic, maybe, they're afraid that reflects badly on them as parents, that they haven't fixed the problem or, or that they're not able to control the child or whatever. And, I'm reminded of something fantastic you said years ago about a completely unrelated thing where you say, if you stop seeing it as a fight and start seeing it as a discussion, look at how the temperature goes down. And so I think maybe neurotypicals will get so hung up on the idea of control, and then we on the other side might get so hung up on the idea of not being controlled
Yes.
that rather than, simply just discussing and kind of, learning different things about each other, then, the temperature would go down, if that makes
Yeah.
any sense at all.
Oh, it makes absolute sense. I remember during the last US presidential election, oh God, when the Democrats branded Republicans weird. They're just weird. And the context creep that happened, Tim Walz could get away with it because in the original quote, I think it was refreshing to have someone probably knock down what he wanted to say about four pegs to something that was kind of a polite thing, right? But then social media got a hold of it. It's like weird, weird. Yeah, you're weirdos, weirdo. And I was sitting here going, guys, we're progressives. This is not the own you think it is because we're weird. We're the ones with the weird ideas and we want people to change. And we have these esoteric ideas of gender and all that stuff. And also, anybody that's neuroatypical or neurodivergent, we're that's the whole purpose of the word, right? That it's not a disease. We're just, we diverge from the norm. And I mean, we're not normal people either,
Oh,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
Anybody that creates, I mean, there are way easier ways to make a living, right? I watch King of the Hill, and I don't know, to me, that show is like so autistic coded now, like propane and propane accessories or Hank Hill's special interests, you know? But his son Bobby from the beginning was very creative and just got instantly obsessed with new ideas that he thought were neat. And of
Mhm.
course, Hank's ongoing tagline is that boy ain't right, right? So what do you think? Because I deliberately on this program do not say sane, and I try to avoid the word normal. I say going good crazy instead of bad crazy. What do you think about the idea of forcing people to be normal? Because I mean, I don't know of a single creative who is normal, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and who decides what's normal anyway?
Right. Well,
And
yeah, I mean, that's a big thing about autism and other neurodivergencies, right? I hear from so many people that there are these social rules that are these things that everybody else knows that they don't. Have you ever felt that?
oh, 100%, yeah. Especially like I used to be in pro wrestling. That was a time. And wrestling itself has its own rules, and it's kind of an in-joke among wrestlers that they don't keep an actual rule book just so they can change the
Yeah.
rules just to mess with people. Like one big thing in a pro wrestling locker room is when you get there, you go around and shake everyone's hand, and like say if two people are having a conversation, it's sort of like, you're almost, what do you do? Like, do you interrupt the conversation to shake the hand, or do you just stand there awkwardly waiting for them to finish? And either could be wrong depending on like how mean-spirited the people are feeling that day.
Yeah, and especially yeah, and yes, Bobby did say he was a professional wrestler. You heard that right. Dude also rocks a Power Rangers costume, like very few people I've ever seen. That is not easy. No joke. But yeah, there are sort of these things, and a big part of adulthood is knowing what to do when you don't know what to do. And we live in an increasingly judgmental age.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's just made it, well, curious what you think about that. It's just made it worse, right? Because I mean, I know I've had conversations with people who are complaining about the behavior of an autistic person. And I'll say, well, you know, they're autistic. And they'll go, it doesn't matter. And where do you go from there in a conversation? Like, of course it matters. What what do you think's going on there? Is that just the normalcy creeping in again, or is it just, well, we're normal, you're not, so you have to adjust?
Yeah, and I think it probably ties into this weird obsession people have with, oh, don't censor us by letting us say the R word. I think it was what Joe Rogan gave everyone permission to say
Yes.
it again or whatever.
Yes.
And they act like they're being censored by, being asked not to say it. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, why do you want to say a word that is designed to dehumanize like a certain group of people?
Yeah,
And
that's a great point. Let's hold on to that and
Mhm.
go to a break because I didn't have that as a topic. I'm going to throw out the rest of what I wanted to do because this is an excellent point. You okay to hold on?
Yeah, of course.
All right. Questions, comments, any feedback for the show featuring Bobby Calloway, actor, director, producer, author of The Shallow Ocean and Joanna the 12 Crowns, and most importantly, a heck of a guy and my friend. To find out where to get Bobby's books or to check out his YouTube channel, Better with Bob, Liana at nottherapyshow.com is my email. Nottherapyshow.com is my website, at Not Therapy on social media. We'll be back talking autism and creativity on It's Not Therapy. The following program is a peer-to-peer advice show and does not diagnose mental health conditions. If you're seeking social services, please call or text 211 or go to 211.ca. We're back on It's Not Therapy. I'm still Liana Kersner. I'm still not a therapist. I am still talking to producer, actor, director, author of The Shallow Ocean and Joanna and the 12 Crowns, Bobby Calloway. And before the break, Bobby brought up a really great point talking about creatives and autism. The idea of language, not saying certain words, Bobby, as you said, meant to dehumanize. And you brought out, Joe Rogan bringing back the R word. Now, it's one of these words where the arguments on the other side is, well, if you take away that word, the word that replaces it is just going to mean the exact same thing. Why should we be afraid of words? I mean, to me, I think it comes down to the difference of, I don't care if someone's offended. I do care if someone's hurt. But what are your thoughts on this issue of language and taking certain words out of your vocabulary, out of consideration for others?
Yeah, because like I have a whole sort of analogy for in case anyone, is acting like, oh, you can't say anything nowadays. And I'm just like, well, you can in the sense that, you can go into a shop and, shoplift. You can do that. No one's saying you can't do it.
Yeah.
It's just there's going to be consequences for it. So you have the right to do it, but if you make that choice, if you choose to do it, then you can't whine if you face consequences for it. We have the right to hold you accountable to those consequences that you were fully aware of.
It is funny, isn't it, that these are people who are fully aware that people don't like it.
Mhm.
Like these are neurotypical people saying these things most of the time. I mean, I find some autistic people who get extremely online, they get very hung up on censorship because they're afraid of, just being told you can't say all these things and it's their natural form of communication. Because, of course, people with autism are sometimes accused of being rude just
Yeah.
because they don't understand a line they've crossed. And this is where we get into what's been called the double empathy gap. Are you familiar with that term?
No, actually.
Okay, the idea that a neurotypical person can't think like a neurodivergent person, and a neurodivergent person can't think like a neurotypical person. So both sides have to sort of bridge the reality that we can't think like the other person. For me, it's the term clear implication. I hate that term, right? Because I am a very literal speaker and it makes me very good at, say, explaining mental health terms to people or pop culture phenomenon very, very briefly. But I cannot stand someone saying I clearly implied something or I was disingenuous. No, I say what I mean to say. And I understand that this is not the way most people speak. I am neurodivergent. And so how how do we handle this? Because you express your opinions online for a living. You express themes in books. You take risks that it's like, okay, some people may not get this. You bothered to put in a very, you know, eclectic cast of princesses and Joanna and the 12 Crowns based from all over the world, knowing that the cultural appropriation accusation threat was out there. How do we thread this needle? Because there's a lot of talk about talking to people we don't agree with, but everybody's going, you first.
Yeah, that's Oh God, that is another great question, and
Yeah, it's a bit, how do you handle it? Like, how do you decide, yes, some people might get upset about this. I don't mean anything bad about it. And you can't control how people are going to interpret something you say on the internet. I mean, people will
oh,
take the
especially
exact
yeah.
opposite. Yeah. So how do you handle that? How do you know that some things are going to upset people, but certain things are just not inherently offensive? How do you find the line in your own work?
Mhm. Oh yeah, I mean, I actually used to get really distressed about that. Like even in my comment section, I would be afraid that, I would always blame myself if someone misinterpreted something I said. So like, oh, it's my fault for not explaining it wrong. But then, the more it happens, you just realize, some people are just going to hear something completely different to what you said.
Yeah.
But I found you can't focus on those people too much or you'll just drive yourself mad. And you can kind of, as long as you're sure in your own intentions and you know that your meaning was true and what you meant behind it, then you can just kind of trust in that and like know for yourself that you did the right thing. And it always makes you appreciate the people who do get it and the people who do like because I'm lucky like in my comment section I get so many great insightful comments as well, and it's like I focus on them and they just tune out the people who heard something different to what you said, and the angry typing and the paragraphs of text. But sometimes the paragraphs of text are like really great insightful stuff as well. So you know, and well, and I think being that authentic and like what you do as well, like putting something out into the world that, has an effect, because like your content had a profound effect on me, and I'm a better person from having, engaged with it for about 5 years now. And I think that kind of gives you a certain respect where the people who do get it, they always appreciate the way you go about it, and that kind of gives you the purpose, if that makes any sense. I kind
It
of rambled there.
it makes sense. I'll reveal to the audience that Bobby keeps a running quote list of the most absurd and yet profound things I say because they are so funny out of context. And I look back at the same time go, I can't believe I said that. No, wait. Yes, yes, I can believe I said it. You know what? Good line. We have to stop worrying so much about I go back to again, we have to stop worrying about offense, but that doesn't mean it's okay to hurt people.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. And the last thing I want to talk about is this idea of autistic meltdowns are, you referenced it in an earlier segment. They're not adult tantrums, they're
Hmm.
overwhelm, right? How, because I imagine, especially when you're directing, overwhelm's huge.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What do you want people to know about how to handle that when an autistic person in your life has a meltdown? Because I think this is one of the most misunderstood elements of autism. An autistic meltdown does not read like an adult tantrum.
Hmm.
They
Yeah,
feel
well,
different. Yeah.
yeah, I suppose the first thing, don't ever go for physical restraint, because like that's a whole thing as well, and like people
Yes.
hate when that's done. Because there was that Sia film Music where it showed the girl having an autistic meltdown, and the you know the guy was just restraining her, and he's like, "Oh, I'm smothering you with my love," and that was just like widely made fun of and condemned.
Yeah.
And I think it's almost like people focus on on it being a problem to fix,
Yeah.
which as opposed to something to understand. Does that make any sense? I'd say
Yeah.
you're probably better versed in that than I am, because I
It
can only speak from my own experience.
it does make absolute sense because people I know and work with who are autistic, they have a meltdown and then they apologize. And I
Oh
say,
yeah.
it's okay. You weren't yelling at me. When something comes out that when it crosses the line into lashing out, then I will set a boundary. But if somebody's just overwhelmed and the arms are flailing, the words are flailing, it's just like a pressure release valve. And I do think that yes, there were problems with people being absolute tyrants in media. And I do think that the no a-holes policy is a good one. That's not the same as everybody, even neurotypical people, get overwhelmed on set sometimes.
No,
Yeah,
especially like 12-hour days at least.
yeah, or when you're working in the rain. That's it for me. I hate working in the rain. You know, my fuse just gets, because it's wet and it's clammy and it's cold, but not the kind of cold that you put on a coat. It does anything about just blah. You know, these are tough, and these are people's passions. You know, and it people will lose it. And what do you say to people who do want to follow their creative pursuits like you, are worried about the reaction they're going to get because, you know, they don't feel like they can predict everything a person is going to say about it? The reason I wanted to have you on is you do your thing despite taking, you know, crap, despite being misinterpreted by a lot of people. For our final kind of idea, what is your advice to people who want to do creative things but are afraid of the reaction?
Mhm. Yep, because I can remember being one of those people as well. Like, I gave myself umpteen reasons why I couldn't do this, why I couldn't do that, and like, oh, I'm saving myself from, you know, this potential thing. And I found the longer I put off doing it, the sort of it's almost ate away at me, and it was like, you know, it was almost like, okay, well, giving it a try, at least, you know, you can say you gave it a try, and if it wasn't for you, then great, at least you know that, as opposed to, you know, all the what ifs and this kind of empty feeling that comes from knowing that you're not pursuing your passion out of fear.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
what does they say? Like, fear and doubt kill more dreams than anything else. Like, I read that somewhere, or a variation of it somewhere, but, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely true. All right. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Bobby, I feel like we're just getting started on this topic. But if you want to see more or hear more from Bobby Calloway, you can check out his amazing books, The Shallow Ocean and Joanna and the 12 Crowns, or you can check out his YouTube channel, Better with Bob. Either way, there's lots of great content that you could hear more about somebody I think is just a heck of a person, honestly. And it's been great to sort of cheerlead every new project you do. Bobby, thanks for coming on It's Not Therapy.
No, thank you for having me once again. You are still not a therapist, and you are still fantastic.
NotTherapyShow.com is the website, at Not Therapy Show on socials. Do you want to do the final line going out?
I'd probably get tongue-tied, so...
Oh no,
I just contradicted my own statement out of fear.
Yeah. Just say it. You're crazy is only a problem if it's hurting you.
Okay. Remember, folks, you're crazy is only a problem if it's hurting you.
There we go. See everybody next time.